The next time you are sitting on a plane right before takeoff, just taking a second to look out the window at the tarmac.
Oh, yeah. It usually looks like absolute chaos out there.
It really does. I mean, you've got flashing lights, weirdly painted grass, people in high-vis vests just waving neon sticks around. It just looks like random noise.
Right, but it is actually this globally standardized, fail-safe language.
Yeah.
Every single painted line and hand gesture you see is a meticulously calculated instruction.
Exactly. So today we are taking a deep dive into the hidden rule book of the sky. We're looking at a stack of incredibly dense source materials, specifically the South African Civil Aviation Regulations.
And also the international standards, the ones laid out in ICAO Annex 14.
Yeah. And our mission today is...
Exactly. But we rarely think about the invisible infrastructure. The laws governing how a plane moves and what condition the pilot's body must be in to fly it are honestly just as critical as the wings themselves.
So we are giving you a backstage pass to that system. The next time you're stuck on the tarmac, you won't just see a blinking light or painted lines. You'll be able to read the secret code of the airport.
You'll definitely be the most well-informed passenger on your flight.
For sure. So let's begin on the physical ground. Before a plane can even dream of touching the sky, it obviously has to navigate the Earth.
Right.
And looking at the regulations, the whole airport operates kind of like a giant computer motherboard. The paint literally dictates the flow of kinetic energy.
It does. But first, there's this brutal math equation to solve. Basically, can the ground actually hold the plane?
Which is a very real concern, right? I mean, you cannot simply land a commercial airliner on a standard strip of asphalt.
No, absolutely not. The regulations rely on a mathematical relationship called the ACN-PCN method. ACN stands for Aircraft Classification Number, and PCN is the Pavement Classification Number.
Okay, so every aircraft has a number indicating its weight impact, and every runway has a number for its bearing strength.
Yes, exactly.
And the rule is just the plane's ACN has to be less than or equal to the runway's PCN.
That's the threshold, because the tarmac is not just a flat surface, It's a deeply engineered structure built in layers.
Right.
When a plane lands, it isn't just resting its weight on the ground, it is slamming hundreds of thousands of pounds onto a few localized pressure points.
Where the landing gear meets the pavement.
Right, and if you violate that math, like if the ACN is higher than the PCN, you risk immediate structural failure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the pavement literally buckles, the landing gear can shear off, and a routine landing turns into a total catastrophe.
So assuming the math checks out, right, and the runway can actually hold the plane, the pilot then has to navigate the painted codes.
White paint is exclusively for runways. Yellow paint is for taxiways.
Okay, but what really stood out in the study notes is the threshold markings. Those vertical white stripes painted at the very beginning of a runway.
Oh, yeah. They look like a giant visual barcode.
They totally do. And they act very much like a barcode for an approaching pilot.
Exactly. The number of stripes directly correlates to the exact width of the runway. So 4 stripes means the runway is 18 meters wide.
And 16 stripes indicates a massive 60-meter wide runway.
Right.
But I have to ask, why does the pilot need to count stripes while they're actively trying to land a plane? Shouldn't they already know the runway size from their instruments?
Well, instruments give you data, but landing requires visual intuition, particularly in the final moments, which is called the flare.
Okay.
A wide runway actually creates a dangerous optical illusion. If a pilot is used to landing on standard runways, a massive 60-meter wide strip takes up way more of their visual field as they approach.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it tricks the brain into thinking the aircraft is much lower to the ground than it actually is.
Wait, really? So their depth perception gets completely hijacked?
Completely. The pilot might flare, pulling the nose up to land way too early. They end up just dropping out of the sky from 50 feet up, causing a really hard landing.
Yikes. So the stripes just give the human brain an immediate standardized sense of scale to counteract that illusion.
Exactly. It's a visual anchor.
That makes so much sense. Now, beyond the runway stripes, the source material details some truly bizarre-looking symbols painted directly onto the ground.
Oh, the ground signals.
Yeah, things like a giant white dumbbell.
Right. You'll typically find these in a designated signal area on the grass. They're designed to be easily visible from the air.
And the white dumbbell means that ground movement for aircraft is strictly confined to hard paved surfaces. Like you cannot cut across the grass under any circumstances.
Exactly.
And there's also a red square panel with a yellow diagonal line across it. That one warns that the maneuvering area is in poor condition.
And if that red square has a yellow cross on it, it means the whole aerodrome is totally unsafe. Landing is just strictly prohibited.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
We live in an era of satellite navigation, digital screens in the cockpit, instant radio communication.
Right.
Why is international aviation law mandating that we paint giant red squares and white dumbbells on the grass?
Honestly, it comes down to a paranoia about systemic failure.
Really? Paranoia?
Oh, aviation law is utterly obsessed with redundancy. Electronics glitch, radios fry, local power grids completely collapse.
That makes sense.
So, standardized by ICAO globally, this visual language is the ultimate unbreakable backup. If all the advanced tech dies, a human being on the ground can still communicate flawlessly with a human being in the sky.
Using nothing but paint and shapes.
Exactly.
Which naturally extends to the ground crew as well, right? The
Yeah.
marshals.
Oh, yeah. The folks standing in front of the plane waving the glowing wands.
Yeah. From a passenger window, it looks like this intense, high-stakes game of charades.
Yeah.
But every single motion has a legally defined meaning.
It's a highly choreographed dialogue. Take the emergency stop, for instance.
Okay, what's that look like?
The marshal abruptly extends their arms above their head and crosses the wands.
Got it. You see that? You slam on the brakes, or there's a slicing motion across the throat with one wand. That just means cut engines.
Right. But one of the most critical signals involves this rapid fanning motion.
Oh, right.
The marshal takes their right wand and fans it from their shoulder down to their knee while pointing the left wand at a specific part of the aircraft.
And that indicates a fire, which is brilliant, because from the cockpit, you might not even see the smoke yet.
Exactly. You instantly know there's a fire and exactly where it is without a single word being spoken over a radio.
Okay, but what if the plane is out on the taxiway, away from the marshals, and the radios completely die? The control tower steps in with the signaling lamp, right?
Yeah, the light gun. It's a classic backup.
So the tower aims a focused, intensely bright beam of colored light right at the cockpit.
Correct. A steady green light from the tower means cleared to take off if you're on the ground, or cleared to land if you're circling in the air.
And a flashing red light means the aerodrome is closed, do not land, or move clear of the landing area immediately.
It's simple, but it works every time.
So we have all these physical rules holding the airport together. You get clearance, you take off, and you enter the sky.
A massive transition.
It really is. I mean, the sky looks like a limitless, featureless void. But according to these regulations, it is actually packed with invisible highways.
And incredibly rigid social hierarchies, too.
Right. When you remove the physical constraints of asphalt and stoplights, and you have machines moving at hundreds of miles an hour in 3 dimensions,
You have to engineer ironclad rules of the air. There is zero margin for error.
the most surprising one to me is the right-of-way, the hierarchy of the sky.
The BGAP rule.
Yes. BGAP balloons, then gliders, then airships, then power-driven aircraft.
Right. The aircraft lower on that list has to yield to the one higher on the list.
That is the universal standard. But wait, look at this hierarchy, though. A commercial jet yielding to a balloon.
Yes.
How does a multi-million-dollar machine with hundreds of people on board have lower priority than a guy floating in a wicker basket?
Well, the logic is actually deeply pragmatic.
Yeah.
Right-of-way in the sky isn't based on speed, it isn't based on economic value, and it certainly isn't based on VIP status.
What is it based on?
It is based entirely on maneuverability physics.
Ah. So the vehicle that is physically least capable of getting out of the way is granted the right-of-way by default.
That's the fundamental principle. I mean, a hot air balloon is entirely at the mercy of the wind.
Right.
A glider lacks an engine. An airship is incredibly slow and cumbersome.
Makes sense.
Therefore, the power-driven aircraft, which has the thrust and the control surfaces to rapidly change altitude and heading, bears the entire legal burden to evade.
Okay, though there is one fascinating exception that proves this rule perfectly.
Ah, the towing exception.
Yes. If a power-driven aircraft is towing something like a banner or pulling a glider up into the air, it suddenly jumps the queue.
It does. It gets the right-of-way over an untowed glider.
Because dragging a giant object behind you totally destroys your ability to maneuver quickly.
Exactly. And when two highly maneuverable, power-driven aircraft approach each other, the geometry of avoidance is strictly mapped out too.
Right, like if two planes are approaching head-on, or nearly head-on, both pilots are legally required to alter their heading to the right.
That eliminates the guessing game.
Yeah, no more doing that awkward, you go left, I go right dance that you do with people in a grocery store aisle.
Exactly. Both go right. And if you are overtaking a slower plane, you pass them on the right side, staying well clear of their wake turbulence.
There's also a visual rule that mirrors terrestrial driving.
Oh, definitely. If a pilot is flying below 1,500 feet and navigating by following a visual line on the Earth, like a highway, a railway track, or a power line, they are required to fly to the right of that line.
Which is so clever. If everybody flies on the right side of the train tracks, two planes following the same tracks from opposite directions will never hit each other.
It's simple geometry, keeping people alive.
But what happens when you climb above those landmarks? You have planes converging from all directions in the clouds.
Right.
How do you stack them so they don't just plow into each other?
Well, altitude in cruising flight is heavily regulated by the semicircular rule. It separates aircraft vertically based on their magnetic track.
Let's break this down, because this is how the invisible highways are actually built.
Okay, so if you are flying a magnetic track anywhere in the eastern hemisphere of your compass, meaning a heading between 1,000 degrees and 179 degrees, you must fly at odd altitude levels.
Odd numbers, like 5,000 feet, 7,000 feet, or flight level 350.
Exactly.
Let me jump in there real quick, because the term flight level 350 pops up constantly in these texts.
It does.
For anyone wondering, a flight level is basically your altitude divided by 100, assuming a standard atmospheric pressure.
Right.
So flight level 350 is roughly 35,000 feet. The system forces everyone above a certain height to calibrate their altimeters to the exact same standard pressure, so nobody is flying with mismatched rulers.
That standardization is absolutely crucial. Now, if you turn around and fly west a magnetic track between 180 and 359 degrees, you are required to fly at even altitude levels.
Okay, so 6,000 feet, 8,000 feet, flight level 360.
Exactly. This simple, odd, and even split ensures that aircraft flying toward each other are automatically separated by at least 1,000 feet of vertical space.
That is amazing. But even with these assigned layers, a pilot flying under visual flight rules, VFR, has to maintain immense spatial awareness.
Oh, absolutely. Flying VFR means you are navigating primarily by looking outside rather than relying on your instrument panel.
Right.
To do that safely, the law dictates strict minima for visibility and distance from clouds. Like inside a control zone, you need at least 5 kilometers of forward visibility.
Wow, 5 kilometers. So you can't just skim the edges of the clouds looking for a gap.
No, not at all. The rulebook says you have to stay exactly 600 meters horizontally away from any cloud and 500 feet vertically away.
You're legally required to keep this massive buffer bubble of clear air around your plane at all times.
And the buffer exists because of closure rates. If two planes are flying at 150 miles an hour and one pops out of a cloud right in front of the other,
It's too late.
exactly, human reflexes simply aren't fast enough to avoid a collision. You need that clear air to give the brain time to process a threat and react.
Which brings up the most vulnerable component of this entire system.
The human being.
Yes, we have mathematically precise highways and fail-safe visual paints. But a perfect system is completely useless if the meat sack operating the machine isn't functioning properly.
The regulations definitely reflect that reality. The most stringent areas of aviation law aren't just about the mechanics of the aircraft.
They govern the underlying biology of the pilots themselves.
They do.
And reading through these physiological rules, they are incredibly specific. For instance, a pilot cannot act as a flight crew member within 24 hours of going scuba diving.
All right.
And they cannot fly within 72 hours of donating blood. I mean, I get the alcohol limits, but why does aviation law care if I hit the beach or give to a blood drive on my day off?
Because aviation law anticipates microscopic biological changes before they become fatal at 30,000 feet.
Okay, let's look at the scuba diving rule first.
Sure. When you dive, the pressure of the water forces your body to absorb compressed nitrogen gas from your tank into your bloodstream and tissues.
So the deeper you go, the more nitrogen gets packed into your system.
Right. When you return to sea level, that nitrogen stays safely dissolved in your body.
Okay.
But as an aircraft climbs, atmospheric pressure drops significantly. If a pilot flies too soon after a dive, that trapped dissolved nitrogen can rapidly expand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, forming actual bubbles in their blood and joints.
That's the bends. Decompression sickness.
Exactly. A pilot could be perfectly fine during a takeoff and suddenly be incapacitated by excruciating joint pain, paralysis, or even a massive stroke in the middle of a climb.
All entirely because of a recreational dive the afternoon before.
Exactly. So the 24-hour buffer ensures the nitrogen safely off gases at sea level.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And what about the blood donation rule? Waiting a full 72 hours seems kind of extreme.
It comes down to oxygen transport. Donating blood reduces your body's total volume of red blood cells, right?
Right.
And those cells are the vehicles carrying oxygen to your brain. Even in a pressurized cabin, the available oxygen at cruising altitude is lower than at sea level.
Oh, I see.
So if you are already deficient in red blood cells, you are highly susceptible to rapid hypoxia.
And hypoxia is terrifying because it isn't like choking. You don't gasp for air. It often presents as euphoria or confusion.
Right. The pilot slowly loses their cognitive function and decision-making abilities without even realizing they are in danger.
And then they eventually black out.
Exactly. It takes the human body roughly 72 hours to replenish that fluid volume and stabilize your oxygen carrying capacity.
It is crazy how the law essentially acts as a strict doctor, prescribing behavioral limits based on atmospheric physics.
It really does.
And then, of course, there are the substances. The classic rule, 8 hours bottled to throttle.
Yes, no flight crew member may consume alcohol within 8 hours of reporting for duty.
And when they do report, they must have a blood alcohol limit of less than 0.02 grams per 100 milliliters.
Which is incredibly low, much tighter than a standard driving limit.
And this applies to all psychoactive substances, right?
It does. No crew member can fly if impaired by any psychoactive substance that affects safety. Marijuana, cocaine, even strong prescription medications.
Though looking at the notes, the regulations carve out a very specific exception. Tobacco and caffeine are excluded from this prohibition.
Yep.
Thank goodness. I mean, the entire global supply chain would grind to a halt if pilots couldn't drink coffee.
Without a doubt. But to prove they meet all these biological standards, pilots have to maintain a medical certificate.
And the older the pilot gets, the tighter the regulatory leash becomes.
Absolutely. For commercial pilots or those flying on instruments,
Mm.
a Class 1 medical certificate is mandatory.
Okay.
For a pilot under 40, it remains valid for 12 months. But as the human body ages, the statistical risk of sudden catastrophic incapacitation, like a massive heart attack or a stroke, it obviously increases.
So the law dynamically adapts to the biological clock.
Yes. For a pilot over 40 who is engaged in single-crew commercial operations, the validity of that certificate drops to just 6 months.
Wow.
Twice a year.
Exactly. You have to prove to a designated aviation and medical examiner twice a year that your cardiovascular, visual, and neurological systems are functioning flawlessly.
So we've covered the ground, the sky, and the human body holding it all together. But what happens when the system breaks? Aviation law has strict protocols for absolute worst-case scenarios. I want to look at military interceptions. It sounds like a movie plot, but there is a rigid legal framework for it.
Exactly. Because entering restricted, prohibited, or foreign military airspace without clearance is a civilian pilot's nightmare. And the response from the ground is swift.
Very swift?
You are flying along, maybe you made a navigation error, and suddenly there is a military fighter jet pulling up off your wing. The sources outline exactly how this plays out, right?
They do. If that intercepting aircraft appears in front of you and to your left and it abruptly starts rocking its wings.
That is not a friendly pilot waving hello.
Oh, definitely not. Rocking the wings is the universal, legally binding signal.
Because at those speeds, a pilot can't exactly hold up a sign.
Right. They use the gross motor movement of the entire airframe to say, "You have been intercepted, follow me."
And as the civilian pilot, compliance is non-negotiable.
You rock your own wings back to acknowledge the command. You follow the fighter jet to whatever landing terrain they lead you to.
And you immediately tune your radio to 121.5 megahertz.
Yes, 121.5 megahertz is the International Aeronautical Emergency Frequency. It is constantly monitored globally by both military and civilian air traffic control.
Wow.
It is the dedicated channel to establish contact and resolve the crisis before the military command feels compelled to take lethal action against an unresponsive aircraft.
And if the worst-case scenario actually occurs at an aerodrome, if a plane crashes on the runway, the regulations have a brutal metric that dictates the rescue response.
Yes, it's called phone to foam.
Phone to foam.
In the event of an emergency, the operational goal for aerodrome rescue and firefighting services is a response time of less than 3 minutes to any point on an operational runway.
Under 3 minutes.
Under optimal conditions, yes. From the second the alarm is triggered in the station, the phone, to the moment the first fire truck is in position and actively spraying fire retardant, the foam must take less than 180 seconds.
That is intensely fast.
Aviation law recognizes the grim reality of an aircraft fire. You have an aluminum tube filled with highly combustible jet fuel.
So survival windows are literally measured in seconds.
Exactly. The location of the fire stations, the power of the trucks, everything is reverse engineered from that single 3-minute legal requirement.
It is an incredible web of rules. So let's look at what we've unpacked today.
We covered a lot.
We started on the tarmac, decoding the visual barcodes of the threshold stripes, the dumbbells, and the high-stakes physical gestures of the marshals guiding planes in a total electronic blackout.
Then we examine the invisible highways of the sky, where the semicircular rule stacks aircraft based on magnetic headings.
And where the hierarchy of right-of-way is dictated entirely by the physics of maneuverability.
Right. And finally, we explored the intense biological standards that treat the pilot's body as the most vulnerable instrument on the aircraft.
Regulating nitrogen levels from scuba dives, oxygen capacities after blood donations, and heart health.
It is a vast, interconnected system designed with one overarching goal, which is ruthlessly mitigating risk in an environment that is entirely unforgiving of human error.
And you, listening to this, you have the decoder ring now. The next time you look out that plane window, you are no longer just a passive passenger.
You'll understand the hidden mechanics holding your flight together.
Exactly. You'll know why the runway has exactly 12 stripes, why you were cruising at an odd-numbered flight level, and why your pilot wasn't allowed to hit the local blood drive yesterday.
Understanding the framework fundamentally changes how you perceive the journey.
It really does. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've just explored a massive legal framework that is 100% built around the human animal.
Right.
The visual hand signals require human eyes. The right-of-way rules rely on human judgment and reaction times. The rest periods and alcohol limits are based entirely on human biology.
That is the foundation of the current aviation paradigm.
But we are rapidly pushing into the era of AI-piloted drones, autonomous air taxis, and uncrewed cargo planes.
It's happening fast.
Machines that don't sleep, don't get the bins, and communicate in milliseconds of data rather than waving flashlights.
Really true.
So the question is, as the sky fills with algorithms, will we have to completely rewrite the laws of the air from scratch?
That's the big question.
Or, 50 years from now, will a billion-dollar artificially intelligent drone still be legally forced to slam on the brakes and yield to a couple of people floating in a wicker hot air balloon?
It's a fascinating collision of future technology and legacy rules, and it's something the industry is wrestling with right now.
It's going to be wild to watch unfold. Until next time, keep looking up and try to spot those white dumbbells on your next flight.